Hello. Before I did a little reading, well, I wanted to tell you a bit about the book. So if you imagine the most luxurious spa that you've ever seen, that is the farm. It's got everything. It's got daily massages, gourmet meals, private yoga instruction, and all of it's for free. In fact, the women who stay there get paid huge money for doing so. And the only catch is that for the 9 months of their stay, their every move is monitored, they can't leave the grounds, and they're totally cut off from their previous life because they are all surrogates carrying the babies of the richest people in the world. And this is what the farm is. My book has 4 different narrators. One of them is an older baby nurse named Ate. For those of you who don't know, that means big sister. And she's inspired by several women that I know from my days in New York raising kids who were still baby nursing in their 70s, and one of them still baby nursing in her 80s, leaving their kids back home in the Philippines, not seeing them in one case for decades, as she just saved up more and more money to support them because one of them was not well. And so the part I'm going to read to you is when Ate, on a baby nurse job, has collapsed, and she's trying to convince her much younger cousin, Jane, to take over for her. But Jane's never had a baby nurse job, and so Ate is giving her a bit of advice, and that's the piece I'm going to read to you now. Sundays are the day off, but for the first week you should not take it. Mrs. Carter will insist, but you must refuse. Tell her you prefer to stay and get to know Henry. She will always remember this. She will tell Mr. Carter, and they will be pleased you are my replacement. You will miss your Amalia, I understand this. I will send you pictures, many videos, but you must only check them in your room. You see the babysitters from the islands on their phones at the playground not watching the children? Do not be like that. You do not get double rate for being like that. I will tell Dina you are coming. She will help you find what you need. Cabbage, the leaves are good for when the mother's milk duct gets plugged. Lactation tea, the mother should drink it several times a day. Multivitamins, also every day. A beer called Guinness, this is good for milk production. But Jane, speak to Dina only in English. No Tagalog, even if the parents are in a different room. Otherwise they are uneasy. They feel like strangers in their home. I do not mean to scare you, Jane. Mrs. Carter and Mr. Carter are very nice. It is only that you need to show respect. They will tell you to call them Kate and Ted, very American, very equal. But it is always sir and ma'am. They will tell you to make yourself at home, but they do not want you to make yourself at home, because it is their home, not yours, and they are not your friends. They are your clients, only that. Mrs. Carter, she's the type of mother who feels guilty. She likes to be with her baby, but she thinks she likes to be with her baby more than she likes to be with him. Do you understand? And this makes her guilty because she believes love and time are the same. But that is not true. I have not seen Roy or Romuela or Isabel or Ellen in many, many years, but my love for my children is the same. Mrs. Carter does not understand this. So she is guilty. Guilty if she leaves the baby for half the day to do her haircut. Guilty when she learns her friend did the breastfeeding longer. Be careful of the guilt, Jane. Do not allow it. At times, Mrs. Carter will tell you, I will take Henry, go nap, you were up all night. But most likely she's only feeling guilty about you. You must give her an excuse to leave the baby. For example, you say, it is time for the baby's bath, or it is tummy time. Or in a joking voice, you can say, can I please have a turn with Mr. Handsome now? If she insists she wants him, okay, but then the baby must be full of milk and already burped and happy, not hungry or tired, in a crying mood. If he fusses with her, she might get jealous. This can happen if the baby smiles at you more, if he is comforted by you faster. And you must stay nearby, one ear listening, but not just standing, always busy, washing bottles, folding clothes. Otherwise the mother begins to resent you for only taking up space while she is the one with the baby. The father? Oh, he is working at a bank. He works very hard, very long hours. Keep your distance, Jane. Be polite, but do not look him in the eyes. And do not smile at him. No, he is nothing like your Billy. But Mrs. Carter, she's still fat from the baby. And you are young and pretty.
So I have some specific questions thought out for you, which I'll get into in a moment. What really struck me about the book, and I think it will strike everyone as you read it, is it's both so specific. It's so specific to the characters and their lives and their struggles and their dreams and their dashed dreams. And it also touches upon so many huge universal themes of capitalism and colonialism and oppression of women and commodification of women and so many things. So I think you've done a really incredible job of telling a very specific stories about specific people who we really come to care about and worry for and cheer on, while at the same time getting your audience, your readers, to think about so many different themes and topics that are quite crucial and quite current to many of our lives. So congratulations on that. So I'll start with my questions as I've prepared them, and we'll see how the conversation goes. And I just want to get a sense, I'm guessing the bulk of people here may not yet have read the book, but if everyone who has already read the book could put up your hands. Oh, wow, look at that. Okay. Well, thankfully I have read it. I really was supposed to read it. There you go. We got that out of the way. So there are some of you who I'm deliberately asking questions that don't give away too much of the plot. I'd like to save that for those of you who haven't read the book yet, because it's quite it's kind of gripping and it's quite suspenseful, and I don't want to ruin that experience and that journey for you, those who haven't read it yet. So the questions are not so much about specifics to plot. So for me, this was such a huge commentary on capitalism, women's labor, the division of women's labor among women according to race and class and processes of colonization, and the endless, very painful jockeying for position between women that results, and all of this under the umbrella of women's subordination to men in our society and around the world. I'm wondering, when you first started writing The Farm, was this your goal? To achieve this kind of impact with your story, or were you just writing? Tell us about how it all began, and when did you realize, when did the big themes come out?
Thank you. When I started writing the book, I was in my 40s, and I hadn't actually written fiction for 20 years at that point. But the ideas behind the book had been stewing in my mind for most of my life. I think probably like many people, and maybe many people in this room, I feel like I've grown up straddling many worlds. I was born in the Philippines. I moved to Wisconsin when I was 6 years old. It was the late 1970s, and so Wisconsin has changed since then, but back then it was not very diverse, and the town that I moved to was definitely not very diverse. I remember being two of four kids with my little sister who were Asian in our big public elementary school, for instance. But on the weekends, we'd visit my dad's family nearby, and they were about 30 minutes away in a town called Milwaukee, and they were part of a very small but tight Filipino community. So I grew up feeling both very different, but also part of something bigger. And then I went off to college at Princeton. It was the first, it was a really amazing experience in many ways. It was really intimidating. It was the first place I understood class. First place I figured out that summer is a verb. I didn't know that. The first place I met kids who would never have to work and knew it and could take all those great internships that I couldn't take in the summer because they didn't pay, a lot of them. And then I went into Wall Street afterwards, in part to pay off debt, in part because I wanted to make it, right? Like I was raised to make it. And I was one of the few women in investment banking, and I was hired for this private equity firm in Boston. I was the only woman there on the investment side. And so that informed a lot of the book too. And then you flash forward to when I'm raising my kids in New York City, and I both worked full-time, and then with a second kid worked part-time, and then I stayed home for a while. And there's a lot of judgment among new mothers. And so that was interesting to be on all sides of that. So I was always I always found it hard to judge anyone across any of those divides, because I was always omitting parts of myself to fit in, and in omitting myself, maybe that's bad, but it would help me understand the other side of things. The other thing I realized when I was raising my kids was, well, two things. One is that the zeal for perfect parenting of my generation, giving your kid the best of everything, which is really manifested in this crazy college admission scandal, if any of you know about what's going on in America now, but in much lesser ways, but still along that spectrum, I would see that kind of stuff. And that, I don't know if this is a very politic thing to say. I think that if I, as a 8, 9, 10-year-old lower middle class kid in Wisconsin, knew how unfair the world is the way I know it now that I have some money, because I've worked in finance, I don't know that I wouldn't have given up. I had no idea how unfair the world was until I had access to this world, and it is really unfair. And then I realized also in New York that the only Filipinas I knew day to day in Manhattan were nannies and housekeepers and baby nurses. And many of them were proud of me. They became my friends. They would tell me stories about the kids they left behind in the Philippines, and a lot of them said, "You were the American dream." And I would say to them, "But so are you," in the sense that the American dream is an aspiration and maybe not a reality. And that what separates my life, right, but my life from theirs, my children's lives, this is the devastating part, my children's lives from theirs and their opportunities has as much to do with luck and happenstance as it does with merit. And I started feeling that way definitely at Princeton, when I meet people I felt like maybe didn't deserve to be there in the same way. But I definitely felt that when I would meet these women who work just as hard as anyone I know. But the gulf, I don't know that it's bridgeable. And so it was all that stuff that I wanted to write about. The idea of the surrogacy facility came a year and a half into writing every day, and writing just shitty stories and not being able to find a way in. But I happened to read a little newspaper article in the Journal, Wall Street Journal, about an Indian surrogacy facility when it was still legal 6 years ago. And I didn't even research it. I just started to do the what ifs, and that became the farm. But the ideas were things starting from when I was 2 of 4 Asians in my public school when I was 6.
That's really interesting that you also talk about the American dream. That was, I had a whole question, and I will get to it now, about the American dream. That what I found